Dear members and friends of West Raleigh, here we are again, looking at 1 year in review and preparing for a new year. Except as we do this, we recognize that this has been a year like no other. In the course of 1 week, we were forced to pivot. We moved from gathering in the beauty of this sanctuary week in and week out into worshiping on a virtual platform. At about the same time, we formed the Critical Care Team, a collective of public health professionals and nurses and the heads of ministries that would be so directly impacted by the pandemic. The Critical Care Team has continued to meet every Wednesday afternoon to look at the circumstances, to respond to our questions, to help us move safely and faithfully to care for one another through this pandemic season. As you look back at these incredible images from our year in review, you'll notice many things. You will no doubt remember the grief, remember the loss, remember what we had, but you'll also see the growth. You'll also see how this change has offered us opportunities to stretch and to grow, to reach out, and to offer more faithful responses to what has been happening in our church, in our community, and in our world. So West Raleigh, enjoy this report. Thank you for all that has gone into its formation. May we continue to faithfully go into the future that God has promised over and over again will be good.
Give us a song to sing, sweet Jesus. Tell me the words you hear that may be kind. Make it as long as the day's work before us. Tell me the tune to teach the people just in time. The day begins, the fields are filling, workers out to do their share. Many hands, all are willing, all of God's children everywhere. And I guess you know how hard I tried to find you. Started here, ended up out there. The devil has tried to sing a song of evil, but he'll never know the kind of music we all share. The day begins, the fields are filling, workers out to do their share. Many hands, all are willing, all of God's children everywhere. And when I have died, sweet Jesus, take me over. Let me know I'll come home to you again. It's been keeping my heart from the pain of growing older, and letting me know that life with you will never end. Day begins, the fields are filling, the workers out to do their share. Many hands, all are willing, all of God's children everywhere.
On March the 11th, 2020, it became clear that it was no longer safe to gather in the sanctuary for worship due to the little understood and quickly spreading coronavirus. So we called on Scott Woodall and Mark McCrory and their amazing technical resources.
Without missing a beat, or a Sunday service, they sprung into action. Scott had already wired the sanctuary for internet, and Mark had the other equipment needed to broadcast. Catherine, Lori, Tom, with the help of Scott, Mark, and the wonderful West Raleigh musicians, have seamlessly brought us beautiful, meaningful worship services. Everything we love about worship, except the hugs and handshakes, streamed right to our homes.
We hired Reverend Lori Pister as a parish associate in mid-June 2020. It's really great having Lori back with us, and we look forward to hearing what she has to recommend about the future of the position this coming year.
The year 2020 certainly has not been a typical one. Indeed, it has offered many challenges, but along with those challenges, some important discoveries emerged. One chief challenge has been doing anything that involves groups of people, but it has been rewarding to see how people are eager to share their abilities as individuals or in small groups of 2 or 3. For all who have been able to assist and those who have assisted in spirit, I thank you. Hopefully, soon we will reach a time that with the protection of vaccinations, we can once again have more musicians involved in Sunday morning music.
The Mission, Peace, and Justice year started out much like any other year, as we participated in the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial March in January. And by the time February and the HKLJ Memorial March came around, we had our Marching in the Light of God banner to carry. With the help of our children, youth, and talented chili and soup makers, we had a wonderful Super Bowl of Caring lunch and raised over $600 for our feeding ministry. Who knew how important those funds would become? Despite a global pandemic, West Raleigh's Bag Lunch Ministry is still going strong. At least $12,000 was raised for the feeding ministry, so West Raleigh has been able to keep providing sandwiches throughout the year. Due to COVID, we only housed Family Promise families in our church building in January. We did provide meals and groceries for the families temporarily housed in apartments during later Family Promise weeks. In May, West Raleigh welcomed Reverend Alex Patchen McNeil, the Executive Director of More Light Presbyterians, who led sessions for church leaders and youth about how we could better welcome and include LGBTQIA+ people in our congregation and community. In June, members of our church participated in a human peace chain, bearing signs and bearing witness in downtown Raleigh to the outrage that followed the death of George Floyd. In the summer, the committee started thinking about how organizations in our community could probably use extra help due to the challenges from COVID. MPJ wanted to use committee discretionary funding to match the congregation in intentional ways of giving, so the community impact challenges were created. In an incredible amount of support, West Raleigh members and friends donated almost $12,000. A place at the table's need was greater than ever, with $3,000 required to feed their guests per day. We exceeded the goal of providing funds for one day. In an effort to better understand and value the history of Oberlin Village, we hosted a panel discussion with Oberlin Village descendants and worshiped with Wilson Temple United Methodist Church. West Raleigh raised funds to help NC Black Alliance with their work supporting voter protection and strengthening the network of elected officials representing communities of color throughout the state. Aided by our youth who created signs to encourage everyone to exercise their voting rights, members participated in the election in different ways. And in our last challenge, we supported Southeast Raleigh Promise, which provides a cradle-to-career pipeline of services and interventions combined with neighborhood revitalization strategies. Madagascar has been hit hard by COVID too. So in addition to our 2,200 annual global missionary support for Dan and Elizabeth Turk and their work, MPJ contributed $250 to a special COVID fund. In October, we were thrilled to welcome Reverend Mami Sum to our pulpit for World Communion Sunday. She is a pastor in the Church of Jesus Christ in Madagascar. Inspired by the work done to plan our More Light service, the community impact challenges, the session's statement on dismantling racism, and the broad interest by church members and friends in the racial equity small groups, we embraced becoming a Matthew 25 church.
Two decades ago, Jack Cover began a passionate mission for West Raleigh to become a More Light congregation. But at the time, West Raleigh was reluctant to take that step. In December of 2019, the Mission, Peace, and Justice Committee asked Session to reopen that discussion. In 2020, the Session authorized the formation of a task force to explore the steps needed to become a More Light congregation.
The mission of More Light Presbyterians is to work for the full participation of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual, or LGBTQ+ people in the life, ministry, and witness of the PCUSA and in society.
While many strides have been made for LGBTQ+ inclusion and rights, too many LGBTQ+ people do not feel they have a place to worship. As the mother of someone in the LGBTQ+ community, I can't imagine not being a part of my daughter's world. Though welcoming God's children might seem obvious here at West Raleigh, do others outside of our congregation know of our commitment and support for LGBTQ+ persons in the church?
Here at West Raleigh, becoming a More Light congregation not only affirms who we are as a welcoming and affirming community who believes that we are created in the image of God, who is bigger than we could ever imagine, but also signals our continued commitment to LGBTQ+ inclusion in the church and in society.
Becoming a More Light congregation also strengthens our bonds with Presbyterian Campus Ministry, which officially voted to become a More Light campus group in 2018. Since we first met in August of 2020, the task force has begun discerning what becoming a More Light congregation would look like for West Raleigh. We look forward to sharing more about this process in 2021.
We are here to introduce you to the Dismantling Racism Task Force. The task force, which began its work in October, has 9 members. We are using the session statement on dismantling racism that you see on your screen to guide our work. This statement is powerful and clear in claiming that we follow Jesus and thus have responsibilities to all of God's people. We have used the language of this statement to develop a set of goals that we will share with the session and the congregation.
We see our work in 3 areas. The first is to foster congregational participation. A second role is to hold dismantling racism as urgent while helping to sustain it over the long haul. And third, it's our task to keep the question of whether we are making a difference in front of us and then make course corrections.
The Arts Ministry of West Raleigh Presbyterian Church sponsored a retrospective exhibit of my watercolor paintings, sketches, and serigraphs. Images from Barbara's Bush opened February 8th, 2020. The show consisted of 26 paintings and additional pieces I have done for the church. The opening was attended by a large number of WRPC members, my friends, and friends in the community. The show closed at the end of February because of the COVID virus.
We started in mid-April making masks, and we just finished in early December of this year. In total, we made more than 1,600 masks for adults and children. The project first started when Rex Hospital put out a call for help with mask making back in March. Our ministry grew from just a handful of people to 15. We had many different types of recipients. Many of you were recipients, but we also did large groups of masks for groups like the Women's Prison, Meals on Wheels volunteers, the Wake County Nurse Practitioner Partnership Team, Families Moving Forward in Durham, and the New Mothers Project in Haiti.
For 2020, Buildings and Grounds had planned a routine year of maintenance and improvements. Then COVID happened. The use of the indoor spaces decreased, but the use of the outdoor spaces increased. And while we all missed seeing each other in church, some of our projects were able to make the most of a quiet building. Importantly, we assessed our HVAC systems for COVID safety. Unfortunately, our older systems don't provide fresh air, and the recirculated air could spread the virus. Despite COVID, several B&G projects proceeded. Among these was the addition of several new hose bibs or spigots around the exterior of the building for better watering of our landscaped areas and the beloved garden. We also had some new fencing installed, first in our parking lot, then later in the beloved garden, for improved security and appearance.
2020, B&G oversaw the reno of third-floor classrooms into office space for lease to the NC Council of Churches. The entire third floor, except the youth room, will be leased out. With the permit issued in mid-November, 2 partition walls and 2 doors were installed, dividing 2 large classrooms into 4 offices. HVAC and electrical services were upgraded for office use, and new carpet was installed in 2 rooms. All 7 rooms were repainted thanks to Dennis, Udo, James, Bob, Emily, and Kate. Scott is working with the NC Council on their IT infrastructure. On the second floor, we had partition walls installed in 2 rooms also to create office space. The children's worship program will relocate to the first floor. This means better access, more visibility, and a closer bathroom. These rooms are painted, have new flooring, and are ready for occupancy. Steeple louver repainting was also completed in 2020. Restarting work in September, we scraped, primed, and completed a first coat of paint on everything. The more exposed areas received a second coat of paint. This generational project is now completed.
I know when we had to pivot, we were laughing about how everything looked like the Brady Bunch. So our annual report is going to be to the tune of the theme from the Brady Bunch. Here's the story of Christian formation, who was planning for an action-packed year. Russ and Lauren, Jim and Emily and Margaret met monthly without fear. They were planning for an all retreat in April, plus a new hire, new curriculum, youth group, work trip, and more. But when COVID hit, the world was at a standstill. They did not know what was in store. Well, they took a breath and quickly learned to pivot. And they shifted, learning new technology. With the help and guidance of Catherine, Lori, and Anna, we gathered and found new life on computer and TV. So the Joy Worshippers met on Wednesdays via Zoom. VBS traveled the world with members virtually. Youth group kayaked, camped, made signs, saw movies in the courtyard. Families hiked, biked, met at museums, and gathered masked monthly. As Christmas neared, we hoped we might be together. We grew tired of connecting from afar. Through it all, we found a way to be God's people. Poured out our prayers, had online pageants, followed the star. Now we really miss our hugs and games and gatherings. Sometimes it's hard to see the end of all this strife. But we've learned that church is much more than a building. The church community is how we show God's love in life.
"2020 was a challenging year for us all. By definition, our committee's task is to provide opportunities for fellowship, both inside the church building and out in the community. And so we had to put on our creative thinking caps and figure out ways to help the church stay connected during the pandemic. Before the COVID-19 restrictions set in, we hosted 2 soup night socials at members' homes, but the 5 other small group socials planned for the spring were canceled. In mid-October, we were happy to welcome 7 new members to West Raleigh. And since we could not host a meal for them in person as we have in the past, Emily Sprague and I drove pretty much all over Wake County that Sunday morning, delivering breakfast goodies and yard signs to them right before their Zoom meeting with Catherine.
The Adopt a College student program follows the college academic calendar. For the 1920 school year, 18 out-of-town Presbyterian campus ministry students were paired with 18 hosts or host families. One family in the church hosted 2 West Raleigh students away at college. The emergence of COVID in early 2020 dramatically interfered with our program. No new student host assignments were made in August for the 2021 school year. Face-to-face contacts were limited to a very few socially distant lunches and COVID-safe outings. Most of the contacts during 2020 were by text, email, phone calls, cards, gifts, Facebook, and Instagram.
Our committee continued its tradition of writing letters and sending care packages to our out-of-town college students and active military personnel. Care packages were sent in late October to express love and support as they faced the many challenges of final exams and learning online, in addition to adjusting to social distancing. This year, we had 1 active military member, Seth Colby, who was aboard the USS Paul Hamilton. A package was sent to Seth in late spring when the pandemic was taking off and personnel were not permitted to leave the ships when in port.
A hospitality and fellowship project organized by me and Emily Sprague provided 32 small flower arrangements, a votive candle, and special shortbread cookies to young members of our congregation, their Christian education mentors, and shut-ins a few days prior to Christmas. The flower arrangements were meant to be reminders of the simple gift centerpieces of past Christmas celebrations. Maurice Ferrier provided evergreens used in the arrangements. Catherine Link, my granddaughter, helped me make them. Other members of Hospitality and Fellowship helped deliver Christmas cheer to the recipients.
Earlier in the year of 2020, I came together with the youth of West Raleigh
Anna, and Catherine to create a banner representing the church's affirmation and acceptance of the LGBTQIA+ community. People of color and those with disabilities were also represented, as we hope for it to fully celebrate and welcome all children of God, especially during Pride Month in June. This banner will be hung outside the church on the back of the wall of the sanctuary for all to see periodically.
We look forward so much to gathering with you all in person when it's safe in 2021.
Faith formation is at the core of Christian life. January and February presented us with the opportunities including Sunday school and worship with Davie Street Presbyterian Church and Bible study coordinated by Pam Wilson. In March 2020, faith formation shifted to a virtual platform. The adult Christian formation team encouraged classes to continue and sought more collaborative opportunities. Our spring concluded with a much needed all-church celebration and of the Christian formation year. Summer was a time for virtual social events, but also a time for reflection as we engaged in the 21-day race equity challenge. We kicked off fall with more collaborative activities, including partnering with Mission Peace and Justice to hear a panel discussion about Friends of Oberlin Village and a discussion of Martin Luther King's Letter from a Birmingham Jail with Vanessa Hawkins. Family Faith had a book study, discussed issues important to their families, heard spiritual journeys, and had some really fun activities like kayaking and biking.
This year, we dealt with the increase of violence in our streets, the COVID epidemic, political strife. The HASIS class has been blessed by many very talented people who have been willing to give their time and effort to teach our classes. People like Mark Zenodin, Rob Evans, Joe Mann, David Wiseman, Jerry McMahon, and Terry Alaba.
The Christian spirituality class has continued to thrive through this pandemic. Our attendance is actually up from prior years. We've also enjoyed adding music and video into our Sunday school experience, which can be easily done by sharing a link on Zoom.
Oh, how we miss our social gatherings that we used to have frequently, but we continue to support one another each Sunday.
Living out the Great Commandments requires us to love fully. And to love fully means that we must be continually learning, forming, and reforming ourselves in the way of Jesus. Theology on Tap is but one opportunity to do this. And this year we've done so in the comfort of our homes through Zoom. We began the year digging deep into the Gospels. Then we moved on to a new understanding of God, an uncontrolling and fully loving God. And finally, we examined what a liberal Protestant theology is and why it matters. The blessings of Theology on Tap are the friendships we make, the open and honest discussions, the delving deep into important subjects, and the recognition that faith matters.
Adult Christian Formation welcomed the end of 2020, celebrating with HASIS class and a carol sing featuring our talented West Raleigh Presbyterian musicians. Thank you, Pastor Associate Lori Pister, for joining us and for your faithful guidance.
Yeah, what can I give him? Give my heart.
Clear back in September of 2019, we began the initial 50 hours of training a new class of Stephen ministers. On Sunday, January 12th, 2020, we gratefully commissioned 3 new Stephen ministers. They are Emily Grant, Madison Stanley, and Cheney Nicholson. We have had to become creative in the ways that we can support and be present for our care receivers as they walk and experience difficult journeys. But God is always faithful in our endeavors. Lastly, I want to express appreciation to Susan Baker, who led our Stephen Ministry training team in 2019, and then remained with us supporting our peer supervision through 2020.
In 2020, the blooming and buzzing in the beloved community garden was overwhelming. We started the year by moving the last mountain of soil into the flower beds and a big spring planting to fill out the front of the garden. Everything stopped as the pandemic hit, until we realized it wasn't going away soon. Volunteers cleared the back half of the garden, and woodland shade plants were put in this fall. Compost bins were installed just in time for leaves from the parking lot and winter pruning. The new picnic tables and benches allowed committees, youth, and friends to meet safely distanced and masked in the shade. The garden would not have survived without the volunteers who watered, deadheaded, weeded, pruned, and more. Sarah Peters installed a rustic meditation labyrinth to help calm our anxious spirits, and Ken Cobb cut up cedar logs to make a path around it. Bertie Beaker printed labels for the hundreds of plants now growing in the garden. Rachel and Cheney Nicholson donated bulbs and signs for the annual All Saints' Day planting. The Arts Ministry continues to work on the Peace Pole, and Joel Haas donated a trellis in honor of his mother, Doug Bennett. And we finished off the year by installing a beehive. Overall, the garden provided therapy and escape for the troubling times of 2020. We look forward to more blooming and buzzing in 2021. You can follow along on Instagram at Beloved Garden.
From live streaming worship services on our YouTube channel to the many Zoom meetings held, we've been able to stay together through a very difficult time. Also, with the building more empty than usual, we've been able to do some interesting projects. When we all return to normal use of the church, you'll find that the West Raleigh Pres Wi-Fi signal is accessible in most areas of the church, including our beautiful courtyard. Our church website, westraleigh.pres.org, will continue to be a valuable resource for information and community. We've learned so much about how to stay connected even when we're not physically together, and we've reached a bigger audience.
The Presbyterian women of West Raleigh did not give up because of the COVID virus. We just found different ways of being Presbyterian women. We have 4 active circles with 57 active members and 76 affiliate members. 3 of the circles use a Bible study, Into the Light, a study of finding hope through lament. The 4th circle discusses selecting books for each month during the year. A new way of meeting has been the Zoom meetings. We're all getting used to that. Our coordinating team includes myself as moderator, Emily Sprague, vice moderator, Judy Colby, recording secretary, LeMay Fields, corresponding secretary, Beth Harris, our treasurer, and committee chairs. LeMay Fields and our PW Card Ministry has sent over 150 cards to members of the congregation during the year. The coordinating team organized a new committee, the Racial Justice. Marianne Bloom and LeMay Fields co-chaired this committee, and we're working especially with Washington Elementary School. Our missions committee, led by Janet Patchy, has collected Toys for Tots, the U.S. Marines special project at Christmas time. And it has organized projects with the Southeast Elementary School. Here we are collecting dry erase markers and are going to help purchase headphones.
Presbyterian women were honored to host the annual Church Women United annual meeting on January 25th. Following the program, women got acquainted over a 2-course tea of sandwiches, desserts, and fruit. We hoped the tea would become a new annual affair for Church Women United. but sometimes plans change. May is usually the time to celebrate the birthday of Presbyterian women with a lovely dinner, cake, and recognition of women who have given time and energy to Presbyterian women. Since we could not gather in person, honorary life membership recipients had the party brought to them. Petey Zabo and Barbara Kirby were honored at their homes with a certificate and pin, flowers, and balloons. Individual women mailed in their birthday offerings. Another nationwide mission of Presbyterian women is the annual thank offering. Through a PowerPoint presentation, women got an overview of the 15 projects funded in 2020, including one worthy nonprofit in our own state, Faith for Justice. Tammy Fort Logan, one of the founders, joined the Zoom meeting from Asheville on November the 16th. There are some benefits to Zoom meetings. The annual Presbyterian Women Christmas Tea carried on despite being apart. Through the vision of moderator Jane Stewart, a recording was made of Christmas music and scripture featuring the talents of various church members. There was a social time on Zoom at the end of the program with attendees chatting back and forth from Raleigh to Maryland. The year of the pandemic forced Presbyterian women to learn new ways of being together, preserving traditions, sharing faith, and promoting collective support of missions.
Hi, West Raleigh. I want to thank you on behalf of all of our students and our board for your support and your hospitality as always, but especially this year. As you all know, we closed the Student Center in March for all things safety and have essentially taken over the courtyard since then. Without the courtyard, we could not have had some of the events that we've been able to have. We could not have the community we've been able to have. We could not have the fellowship that we've been able to have. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We look forward to being back in the Student Center soon and making a mess in the kitchen and all of that good stuff. But for now, we are grateful for the gifts of technology and Zoom, and especially for the courtyard.